Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Richard Lewis Show. I'm your host, Richard Lewis, and joining me this time, it's a player I've been wanting to get on the show for ages, and we made a ton of day. I fucked it up. It's all my fault. But it is, of course, Styko, now of Apeks, a representative of the CSPPA as well. We'll be talking a little bit about that and maybe some cryptic tweets. Thanks a lot for joining me. Good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and looking forward. Yeah, we've been trying to schedule this for a long time, but it's worth waiting, I think. So it's going to be fruitful talk.
You're right. It's actually worked out pretty well. I think prior to this, it was going to be more kind of vanilla. But obviously now there appears to be something brewing, but we'll get to that in good time. The first thing I just want to start by talking about is obviously the new team that you joined at the start of the year. Apeks, obviously a known Norwegian entity. They've had a lot of players come through, the books down the years. They've had some pretty big names, especially in recent times. And I said when I saw this team come together, I was like, listen, that's a sleeper team. That's one of those teams that can be, that's going to surprise a few people. And I think you've had some pretty decent results so far. Early days, let's say. But talk me through joining Apeks and how that's been.
So basically, after FPX fumbled, towards the end of 2021, which was unfortunate, but really it was only ourselves to blame. Really, we didn't put up a really good fight in tournaments that mattered, especially the major. We failed to qualify there, and it's been quite disappointing because we've been grinding this online pandemic road to Rio back in the days with GOTS, and then we switched to FPX, and we were always in a position to qualify. But the last tournament that ended it all was IEMFO, which was like last EU RMR, and we failed to secure a playoff spot there, which essentially meant that we were out, and that broke down pretty much everything. We were talking about lineup changes for a longer period of time, even if we get to the major, because things weren't working clearly, and we were just staying together for the sake of not losing RMR points, So generally that was all kind of screwed up. But moving on, I got approached by a number of teams, one of which was Apeks, and they talked me through the lineup that they were willing to sign, and the players that they mentioned really made sense to me, and I'm really happy how it all panned out, that everyone pretty much who was listed as a potential player agreed to the terms, and ultimately got signed. Especially I was happy for players such as JChem and Chosi, which was our youngest player, and he's really incredible. He was murdering us in scrims back in FPX days. He was like, who the hell is this guy? And he was playing really well. And after I saw his name on the Apeks potential list, I saw a huge potential in the lineup. And as you said, we're a sleeper team. We are not something, we're not heavy hitters in a way that we're superstars. But I think for how young we are quite improving steadily. And we still struggle with tier 1 opposition, but when you look at tier 2, tier 3, I think we're improving really well, considering the early days of the team. So I'm happy with it.
Yeah, it's a strange time for Counterstrike. Obviously, we started the year full of joy. It looked like we were going to have one of the strongest top 10s in a long time, a very competitive field with lots of emergent storylines and question marks about whether or not we were going to enter into a Na'Vi era, and what teams could potentially break that down if it were to happen. And obviously with the situation in Ukraine, we're now looking at a very uncertain future for Counterstrike. Particularly, I think there's a very real risk, based on what I've been told, that there's going to be, I'm calling it the esports Iron Curtain, the CSGO Iron Curtain. There's not going to be any. I don't think we're going to see Russians competing at big tournaments for a while. And listen, I know the situation in Ukraine is sad. I'm an esports guy. I think it's sad that teams like Na'Vi aren't going to get an opportunity to live the era that could have been if it does come to that. So It's just a weird time for CS, dude. Like, I know, I kind of feel just unbelievably sad about where we are right now.
I can't believe how hard it must be for the players
Yeah.
of any team really from that region, but especially like you see VP or outsiders. I don't know how to refer to them right now.
So
I guess
they're calling themselves outsiders.
Yeah, so outsiders and players, which is Gambit roster. Those are some, young individuals, right? It must have been really hard for them to like withstand all the pressure and dealing with this kind of environment, really, that is brought up to them. And Navi as well. Navi they have Perfecto, they have Bit, young players. Like, I don't know how, for example, Monesi and G2, let's say, like these young players, they have so much focus on CS that I truly believe that there must be something like performance hindrance because of all the things that is happening, and this is going to happen for quite a while, it seems. So it's super unfortunate. I can't believe, I would never like to put myself in the position that they are in right now, and they have my tremendous respect that they're even competing at this point, and we're screaming them regularly, and they're playing really well. So they seem good at blocking these things out and just focusing, doubling down on the performance in CS. That's what matters to them probably the most right now. And huge respect towards them.
It's probably nothing you've thought about. It might be a little bit tasteless and crass to even kind of bring it up, but obviously in any period of flux in CS, whatever the cause is, it is teams like Apeks that what you would believe would be the beneficiaries of climbing the ladder, so to speak. I look at a number of teams above you currently in the world rankings. You're currently 28th at the time of recording this. And I think you're a better team than a large number of them. And obviously with change in the top 10, I think Apeks can certainly get up those rankings and maybe get some invites. So tell me about that. Tell me about kind of where you position yourself in terms of world rankings and how important invites to big tournaments are for an organization like Apeks.
The invites itself are a huge part. Like, it saves you so much time to not battle it out in open qualifiers, which is hell, and close qualifiers, which can be really hard as well. Just because, like, I don't know a single team that would be able to consistently win those qualifiers, those open qualifiers nowadays. Like, there's always some upset coming in, and you can see it in North America.
I was going to say, we just saw that with the RMRs, right?
Yeah. A lot of them, it's crazy, really. And therefore, invites are especially important for maintaining that brand and maintaining that ranking, which is something that we will quite heavily rely on if we want to hit those top 20s. And I always put it in the context with my previous team, which was FPX, and we hit pretty, like, we were like top 17, top 20, top 25 in the world. I think this team is better. Honestly, I'm not saying it because, I feel like it. I feel like the team environment.
I agree on paper for sure.
Yeah, and that's why I think that we can hit those numbers quite early. But when it comes to tournaments like organized by ESL, by Blast, everything's like on the paper now that everyone's in an agreement. It's very close circuit. It's very hard to get into those tier S tournaments. Therefore, I'm not really sure where we're going to stand on this, because we're obviously not part of these agreements. We're not part of the Louvre agreement, etc., etc. So even if we gain those rankings, it's going to be incredibly difficult for us to maintain the position. And we can see this in likes of Copenhagen Flames, for example. They were having really good rankings like towards the end of 2021. I mean, Q3 of 2021 probably. And it's incredibly difficult for them to climb up, because like there's no way they're going to get invited to those big events other than qualifying themselves.
Yeah, I mean, you also talked about, you're happy for some of the players on your team. The player I guess I'm the most happy for, besides you, of course, because you're always one of my favorites, is Nork, who, what a mad position he finds himself in career-wise. I thought he was one of the best players on the NIP roster. Obviously, when they buy Device, he's one of the greatest players of all time. So you just got to take it on the chin. He's better than me, he's bigger than me, But it must be a weird feeling because you didn't do anything wrong. And then he's had to sit back, not play for a while, and watch as Device has struggled with form. The team has struggled with form. And now, of course, Device isn't on the roster at all. And it's probably left him scratching his head a little bit about, just what the fuck, what is CSGO? Like, how does this happen? So I was hoping you could give me a little bit of insight into how he's handling being on Apeks after what is, realistically, just being honest about it, quite a fall in terms of stature for his career.
That's definitely true, and I agree that Tim Nock is really good player. He's super positive as well when it comes to like solving issue within the team. So he's open-minded, and he's bringing up a lot of discussions as well. So props to him. I think he's a really good player in general. So I didn't know him before, so I wasn't as excited as I was about Jacob and Chosy. Right. But right now, obviously, everyone's equal here. So I would position everyone equal when it comes to who's the MVP, who's the star of the team. Everyone is like, we're not having a clear star here. So Nock is definitely was put in a position that is, difficult to say the least, because like, as you said, after he got replaced, the NIP team has been like finding themselves constantly with the different players. They bring up academy players, 2 or 3 of them. In fact, the S-Attack came in that span of time as well. Device got out of the roster, and it's unclear whether he's going to ever come back. I hope so, but it's really struggling to see how NIP really fell down. And I think that Nock removal was like a trigger point for it. And I mean, I see NIP couldn't know that this is coming. I'm being after smart here, obviously, but if you have opportunity to get a Device, well, I'm pretty sure even Nock would agree that, well, I'm getting replaced by a Device. Like, that's completely fair,
Yeah, and it's sad because obviously if he'd gone down to the academy team, he'd be back in it playing right now instead of Fozy, right? But obviously it's kind of, you can't possibly know that. And like I say, obviously we don't know where the ceiling is going to be for this Apeks roster yet. Now, you mentioned as well that you feel this is a better team than Fun plus Phoenix. I've got to ask you a few questions about that org. And again, you can decline or say no comment or whatever.
Okay.
But they were in the headlines recently for, bad reasons, essentially. And just for those who didn't catch the story, what FPX did was they issued an ultimatum to a CSGO legend, Angel, who's now playing on their Valorant team. Angel lives in Kiev, or did. And obviously, again, with that situation in Ukraine, he wasn't able to meet his playing commitment. And FPX, according to reports, had said, you gotta get the fuck out of Kiev and get somewhere where you can play the games for us, or we're not going to pay you any money. Which, of course, everyone who saw that thought that was absolutely awful. Now, I also recall them back during Flashpoint. The whole like weird fucked up thing with Heroic and S-Tag and all of that stuff. And they just seem to be an organization that I think it would be fair to describe them as blunt. Not very, you know what I mean? Just not very subtle. They just boom. They just do what they do. And if we have to retroactively deal with negative PR, we will. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience with the organization and kind of how you found them to be?
So honestly, majority of the communication with the organization led through our manager. We were in touch with actual management of FPX, the people in China, very rarely. If it was like 5 times for our time in FPX, then it would be too much, I guess. So all communication was done through the third person, and that communication, I remember vividly that it was incredibly difficult to orchestrate because of time zones and etc. Like simple questions were taking like days to answer for whatever reasons it was. I don't know if it was an issue with the manager itself, but I'm guessing it was more of a FPX communication issue because I remember after IM4, that RMR tournament that we pumped out, our manager was fired together with our coach, and we were in a process, or I was in a process of like bringing the FPX team into the rebuild phase where we were gonna get out 2 players and bring some new in. So I was in charge of asking people around, like, would you be willing to build something together, etc., etc. So during the time, since our manager was out, I had to deal with them personally, with the management of FPX, and yeah, I can tell you that it was pretty difficult. I mean, no blame on them, but it was basically text messages and calls that were really in difficult time frame. It was taking too long, etc., etc. Then suddenly they decided that instead of rebuild, they want to completely shut down the CSGO scene, and they've never came back since then. So it was quite hard, and I'm pretty sure they were really busy with their flagship, which is League of Legends. Worlds happened at that time. They won Worlds in 2000, I don't know, 19, whatever, like a few years back. They were winners, so this is their major game title that they want to put focus on. They have like 10 people on the roster because every position has a sub or something. I don't follow that closely, so I don't know. So it's important for them to maintain that game, League of Legends, in a good state, and they just at that time bombed out of Worlds as well. Like they were dead in last in the group or something. So I guess they backed out of the plan of the rebuild CS:GO and to shut it down completely because they needed to rebuild League of Legends, which is more priority for them. And probably that's how they decided to end part ways with Counterstrike in general. For now, at least, I hope they will come back. I don't have any bad blood between them when it comes to like financial stuff. They were always on point. Contracts were on point. Well, that was thanks to like agents as well. Like there were some fuck ups there that was really weird to say the least. Like I've never seen that before. So yeah, in that regard, in contracts, there were some shady things going on. It was major fuck up that I've never seen ever before, and I wouldn't even spot it if it wasn't for my agent because it was so subtle. But when I saw it, damn, you're right. I'm gonna get screwed by this, and I was lucky. I was lucky. I got this message from him. So yeah. Other than that, FPX good org, but there were definitely shady things going on.
Okay. With that in mind, then I guess it's a good point to pivot because we've talked a little bit there about player issues. We've covered a broad spectrum of things in a short time. We're talking about weird contracts, the need for an agent, obviously Device currently being out with mental health, and you've always struck me as a conscientious guy. So it doesn't surprise me that you are one of the representatives over at the Counterstrike Professional Players Association right now. But I did want to talk about the organization in general and kind of how you got into it. So I'll just do a little bit of a framework here, and that is that I was recently talking to someone who was involved with the LCS, the North American LCS Players Association, and brokering a deal they've made with one team, which is going to increase their ability to commercialize their rights and, probably piss off some of the orgs a little bit. And he also had talks with the guys at the CSPPA, the previous administration, let's say. And I asked if he thought that the CSPPA had been a failure, and he's very political and polite and diplomatic, as you'd expect. But basically, he said, he didn't envy their job, and he thought it was unbelievably difficult, and they're working across multiple countries, and all of that stuff. So, I mean, look, I personally do think the CSPPA has been a bit of a letdown. I am saddened by that. I'm aggrieved by that. It's cost me friends to say that because a lot of people were really invested in where it went publicly. So I'm just letting you know in advance, I am coming in with a little bit of a bias and a little bit of baggage. But let's start by asking you, even before you were in the CSPPA, what did you think about the CSPPA?
Before I was in CSPPA, I kind of think they were like, it was a cool initiative for me. Because like I saw them back then, there were LAN tournaments, obviously, and I saw them having meetings because all those teams that are representative of board members, they were like in best teams in the world, and they attended these tournaments. So it was really easy for them to kind of meet, once per month around the table and talk about stuff really quickly, briefly, update each other on stuff they were doing, and I kind of thought it's a cool initiative because I didn't know back then that much what they were doing, and I guess this is true for many of players right now because CSPPA, and I agree with you, lacks a lot of stuff. Like we're not really good in a public image, and I'm not here on this call with you to like defend it, right? I think it's completely true, and I think we've been lacking like some stuff like transparency. But I can tell you that I think this board is aware of these things more than the previous one was. Those were pro players that were really just, you know, pro players, and their 100% focus was on their team, on their performance. And I can see that players that have been on this board right now, they are like setting up calls with tournament organizers. They themselves are involved in those talks. I myself am investigating some stuff. Like we delegate work within board members and we do it by ourselves. Like I feel like we're more involved compared to the previous board. And I think Chris J once said, because he was part of both boards, he's right now, and he was in the previous team, previous board as well. And he said that the calls there or meetings there were really like, people were not active in those calls, you know, in a say like when someone said, what are your opinions about certain topic, people were like, yeah, like they were not really active or passionate about it. But I feel like there's a huge difference right now in terms of that everyone tries to chime in a little bit, help each other. Like Golden is asking me, hey Styko, do you need help with this? I can set up a call. I know the guy there. I will CC you into the email, etc., etc. And I'm really happy about investing like 10 hours of my week into just CSPPA things, which seems like a lot. I could have been playing CS for 10 hours more, you know. I could have been a better player myself, but I care not equally. Obviously, CS is my priority, Apeks is my priority, but I care about environment we're playing it. It's not. It's something that I've seen people get screwed over through contracts, during tournaments, you know, rules, etc., etc. And I'm not okay with that. And I'm here in this CSPPA. Originally, I joined just as a basic member, but then I heard that it's possibility to get into the board, and I was like, I think I can help. I think I can add value to this. Let me do it, and I'll do my best. I promise. And that's how I got it.
Let's just talk a little bit about Mads Oland then, because I think the general perception is that there is some weird and shady shit gone on in the past. And Mads Oland is no longer running the show, I believe. I think he might have moved to like an advisory capacity. But there were a number of stories that came out about the CSPPA, which really shifted perception from it being a positive force for Counterstrike players to a negative entity. And that was, of course, first of all, there was that weird thing with the agency, where apparently they were giving like player agency advice without sort of declaring it or declaring it as a service. And that obviously is contrary to even some of the other player interests in the CSPPA. So they got called out about that. It was publicly reported. They said we won't do it anymore. There was obviously as well, Nicola Nyholm has accused the CSPPA of disrupting the players on Astralis and causing contract disputes and drops in form. Now, I know Mads Oland historically because I'm a sports writer, and so I knew who he was when he came in. And I wrote an article really laying out his history. He's a very divisive figure, iconoclastic. Depending on who you talk to, he's either good or bad. So I wanted to get your view on the Mads Oland era of the CSPPA, and do you think the criticism that people like Nicola Nyholm leveled at him and reports about the agency, do you think that was valid?
Honestly, when I joined as a board member, Mads Oland, I don't know him personally well. Honestly, it was all Michael Doy that was then CEO, you know, of CSPPA. I think that's the title. I'm really messing this up. CEO. I can't really think, but Mads Oland, I personally don't think I've ever spoken to him privately. I don't know, but you're right that he's acting right now as an advisor, and he occasionally joins a call that we have. Like we're trying to set up a monthly call, and he's just very passive. Honestly, he's the guy that talks the least, and if he has something to bring up that we probably missed, then he will do so. But most of the times he's just passive listener there, and all I know about his disconnection with CSPPA is that he got offered an opportunity that he couldn't pass up somewhere else. But I don't even know what kind of opportunity was that or where he currently works. But yeah, I wish I could answer you more on this, but I really don't know him. It was the time where he left that I really came
Yeah,
in
right.
and started. So
yeah, I figured as much. I mean, here's another question for you. And again, I'm sorry, I'm giving you the questions that obviously the board could probably answer as a collective, or the new management should be answering effectively. But I obviously value your opinion. The other issue that's been talked about a lot is the CSPPA business model, which it doesn't have a sustainable revenue stream that any of us can see beyond going to tournament organizers and saying, listen, if you pay us some money, we'll work with you and endorse your tournament, essentially, which obviously they've done with great effect with ESL, much talk of historic agreements. But if you don't, maybe we will not endorse your tournament and maybe our members won't feel comfortable attending. Now, that might sound pretty benign on the surface of it. I've advocated for such schemes in the past myself, back when I was looking into creating a player association. But equally, it also has the same business model as essentially a protection racket, a shakedown. You say, that's a nice tournament. Be shame if something happened to it. If you pay us some money, nothing will happen to it. And that, to me, I think has left people a little bit unwary and unsure about the CSPPA and how impartial it can be. What do you think?
Yeah, so when it comes to funding, let's talk about that first. So when CSPPA was being set up, the original board decided that it should be free starting out. So there's that's to answer the questions why players do not pay for CSPPA themselves, right? This is to make sure that not being able to pay membership fee should not prevent younger players or new players in need of help to become members. And this is still to this day our policy. We don't really want players not to have access to help because they can't pay this membership fee. And we also we're 300 members probably. This associate, it's just not really possible to fund the entire operation of this players association with membership fees. It really just can't be done in a long term, when it comes to lawyers and everything around it. I'm not expert because I'm not within economics, of this thing, but it's just incredibly hard from what I've heard. And so we decided to fund it by having members voluntarily sign over certain collective agreement, collective rights to CSPPA, and therefore we allow to sell those this license to TOs such as ESL, Blast, etc., PGL. And from my understanding, this is when this was presented to me, this is exactly how many of the big player associations do this across the world. This is first association I've ever been part of, so I don't have any background experience on this, but this is what I was told, and apparently this license is modeled after big PAs in the US as well as a lot of European football players associations, which I think the background originally comes from. You said Mats Oland, he was from sports kind of thing, right? You said, I think they were, that's exactly why I think this was modeled after them. So, and this is widely used across all the major PAs. And I think, I'm not sure how NALCSPA does it.
What their model is, and this is what they've said publicly, obviously, I'll be honest with you, for 3 years, it did fuck all. It just didn't do anything really. It was sort of an avenue for players to get together and bellyache. It had a representative that was picked from a short list that was appointed by Riot Games. Riot Games should be the chief antagonist in a relationship with players that play in a Riot Games owned league. Yet they were the one one funding it. They were the ones suggesting the representatives. And that was mainly because players were just disinterested. The deal they've got now is they've explicitly said, we will use the money from the commercialization of our image rights and player rights. Let's say, for example, trading virtual trading cards or being in a video game. And we will use the money from that, the percentage of the money from that, to fund the continued existence of the association for other things. Say you need a lawyer or, whatever. So that's how they're doing it, which is more, that rings, I don't know if I spent too long in America, but that rings a bit more true about the kind of model that an association has to have. Because if you get into individual membership and people pay membership, I think that's one of the components that make it legally distinct as a union. So it gets a bit more, there's more legality around that and more checks and balances you have to meet.
Yeah, but back to the point which you made, like we can do a shakedown where we don't sell a license to the tournament organizer and we say that we are not going to like attend the event or boycott it or whatever, right? So what we're essentially doing is, I see your point completely, but what we're essentially doing in addition is that we are trying to work with the tournament organizer once we start collaborating on certain stuff. Like we're giving feedback throughout the tournament. Pretty much every tournament that is being played on tier 1 is like we're having meetings with ESL, let's say, and we're having calls and saying what players have feedback for in terms of like, let's say, COVID protocols, or how they feel the schedule is going, how they feel accommodation, how they feel travel is going, what can be improved on, what was really like thing that should be removed or added, and like all these things, I think these tournament organizers value, because in addition, it creates better PR for them, right? And players are more happy attending those events. So if we say, yes, hey ESL, you really need to like improve your computers. Let's say we're dropping FPS on that map, and it's happening across like bootcamp rooms and tournament rooms, etc., etc. You have to really fix this. ESL is not like, yeah, well, we don't have budget for it, but they're always like, okay, we're going to keep that in back of our mind and let's improve on this and we will get back to you, etc., etc. COVID protocols is something that we've been talking forever, like past year, like making sure that everything runs smoothly, because the fiasco from international when PGL were running the international in Dota, and there was fiasco where everyone basically became positive and they couldn't attend, etc., etc. So this is something we're trying to push here as well. PGL is about to host Antwerp Major. And we want to make sure that what happened back then won't happen now. And we're trying to, me personally, I'm talking to Silvio from PGL about a lot of stuff that concerns vaccinations and making sure that everything's ready for the Antwerp to actually happen properly when it comes to COVID. Because I know pandemic is on the decline right now, I guess you could say, but it still can screw up
one outbreak at a tournament. Yeah, of course, exactly. One outbreak at a tournament. I mean, we've already seen, there was obviously lots of circumstances around Katowice, but we had a number of stand-ins due to COVID at that, and it does have a hugely negative impact on the tournament. One thing I will say about PGL, they did run a really good bubble for CSGO. I know they did have a few issues with Dota 2. My understanding is some people did break the bubble, and that's why that happened.
Okay.
But in CSGO, I think it was all. I don't think there wasn't a single case when we did the event in Romania. So
in Romania, yeah, I guess you're right, and even. I agree. Like they've been doing well. I just it was a little bit of outrage with the mandatory vaccinations, they require for Antwerp, and I've been like asking them like, what if players can get that like for medical reasons or whatever. I mean, there's 99%, if not 100% of players in attendance will be fully vaccinated.
Yes.
But what if, like I was myself pretty close to not being able vaccinated because of my condition, my heart condition. Imagine I would be attending, right? I would be attending the major and I suddenly can't do my job. I'm going to be dropped from the team. I'm going to be benched. Like it's a huge issue, right? When you look at the possibility is small, but I just want to have it covered in case there's one player that will suffer from something like that.
Yeah. The other big CSPPA talking point, and then we're going to talk about your role within the CSPPA, and we'll move on to the other topic, the big one. But let's there was an unprecedented move where they took strike action against Blast in the middle of a tournament, and I've never seen anything like it in esports history, and I've been around a while. And it was it's an unprecedented move. It is the most drastic move a group of players can make. I mean, or workers in general. The steadfast refusal to give up your labor and all of the resultant penalties that entails is a profound message. And generally, it's when things are at their absolute worst. What we found out later was that not only was the strike action based on a relatively frivolous thing, which was some players didn't like the notion that their voice communications were being recorded and potentially listened into by analysts, which is the purpose of it, or one of the benefits of it, so they could provide more insight. And it was also predicated on a hypothetical that never happened, which was there was a claim an analyst had or could leave their job as an analyst, go and be a coach, and they would essentially have leaked strats. Now that, as I said, it transpired was just based on bullshit. So I've got to ask, how does that become a big topic for the CSPPA? Who's driving that? And how do we get to strike action? Because the whole thing, historically now, we can say it was ridiculous.
Yeah, so I remember this. I wasn't part of the tournament nor CSPPA back then, but I think players especially were very frustrated on how they were treated in certain areas, and this was one of them. And on full player comms being leaked to the other teams, I'm saying here leaked, they weren't like leaked, it was a potential to be leaked, right?
Right. Okay.
And players, ourselves, we had no control over how this information was stored and shared. That's the most important thing. Not really that shared part, because that's gonna like be public, like if it's gonna get shared, but how is it stored? What is done with those informations? Like, right? It could have been very well sent to someone that is completely outside of the team, and you could share it even after the event, etc., etc. It creates a huge integrity problem in a sense that, as well, during the tournament, when you're playing a Counterstrike, I can say this myself, sometimes you say really dumb stuff, like in the heat of the moment, adrenaline. Sometimes you're saying stuff that are potentially able to ruin your career. Right? Yeah. But just in the heat of the moment, you don't mean it. But we all come from different cultures. Something that is insult in that language isn't insult in my native language, etc., etc. Like it obviously you have to draw a narrative here, but it could have been again used against some players that he called out that player, and then it potentially leaks, and then it creates drama, and that he gets benched because of it. He has to make an apology, etc., etc. So right now, every tournament, whenever we were playing, the comms are being recorded, and we're aware of it. Admin comes to our TeamSpeak channel, and he starts recording. He makes sure that, guys, I'm recording now. I'll let you know now, and we know how is it stored right now, right? That it is used to just create content, and even that, it's pretty mild when it comes to like stuff. They censor out stuff. They don't share like strategy at all. It's mostly hype clips, or like fun clips that people are talking between each other. So that's good. And as well, it kind of helps that we have eSig now that is able to have access to those stored communications, and then they can conclude anything from, let's say, a coach bug being abused. Was it really that coach didn't communicate it to the other team?
Oh, yeah, I think we've seen how important those comms can be, right?
Now it is very important. So it was really not about comms being recorded. It was that comms where we were unaware what is really happening with them. And I know you said you brought this up that analysts could say this to certain play or like go and change the job, change the field, and he goes into coaching role. I think what is really true is that some analysts and talent is they're ex-pro players, let's say, and they're really good friends with certain people that are still competing at those events to the point where like they're like buddies. And I'm pretty sure that it might have been like talked over, over a beer, like in that round he read you so well because you did this. Like even that information that could have been said there is integrity issue in my eyes.
Yeah, I think you know, look, we've actually had something like this come up before, just not in CSGO. It happened in League of Legends. Okay. There's a guy called Deficio, if you know him.
Yeah, I know.
And basically what happened was, and this is just, classic Riot Games. He'd been offered a job with Copenhagen Wolves. And he was obviously one of their leading commentators at the time in their European product. And he got offered this job with Copenhagen Wolves. And that's not a problem, although Riot pretended it was. They basically said that, he didn't disclose the job offer quick enough. But then what happened was there were some leaked chat logs where the Copenhagen Wolves coach, a guy called Dentist, had sort of said oh yeah, Deficio's been leaking me information about all the teams that he's been watching. Now, what's weird about that is, first of all, it implies that a coach of a team would need that and isn't watching all of the games anyway, which of course they are. Second of all, during Riot's investigation, Dentist, the coach, said he lied about it. Deficio hadn't leaked him anything, nor did they find any evidence he had. But they suspended him anyway. Okay. So things like that have come up. I agree. If things like that happen, it is an integrity issue. But the problem you've got is I don't think you're ever going to stop conversation. And then we get into the world of, if an analyst says the player shouldn't have done this on a broadcast, what's the difference with him saying it privately? So we do get into a strange, murky territory, even though I agree with you in principle, I think.
Yeah, I agree with you in principle as well with the Styk, that it was blown out of proportion, but it was in a sense that if I look at it from the player's point of view, I would have been mad. I know that
sure.
For example, I'm bringing this up again, but in the heat of the moment, you say some stuff you shouldn't be saying towards other people, and maybe you have some internal jokes that are not really jokes when it's not internal anymore, right? It can create a very bad damage. And I completely I know myself that I act a little bit differently when I hear in my ears that, oh, someone's recording right now. And admin starts recording. I'm being very careful what I say, but I can see some people are still with an adrenaline rush and competing, and it's 15-14, you're gonna scream some bad stuff.
Yeah. Look, and I've brought this up. I brought this up before. I've said many times, I don't want player comms recorded. I don't like it. I think it's too fraught with danger in terms of the more people that are exposed to private communication, the bigger the issues there are with leaking. However, prior to that, the teams which employ the players have agreed, yes, we will allow our players to be recorded. And so it becomes a much more complex and nuanced issue than just, well, what if an admin decides to leak something? Again, we actually had that Na'Vi issue, if you remember, where a guy, an admin who was stood behind Na'Vi overheard a conversation and he made a Reddit thread about it for clout, about potential roster moves and stuff.
Yeah, I remember.
And it's listen, you can't trust everyone in the room. There's a lot of fucking dickheads around. That's just the nature of the beast. So, yeah, it's very, again, in principle, I sort of agree with it. It's just that the problem obviously is that you have already agreed to this, via the kind of controls that you allow your team, the team owners to have. And they, by the way, were obviously vehemently against the strike because they themselves are in partnership with the league. So it's not good for them. It's not good for sponsors. I think ultimately at the end of it, it wasn't particularly good for players. But yeah, you have to ensure that people aren't storing your data and storing recordings of you. I think that is a principle worth fighting for, just perhaps not in the manner in which it unfolded, like 1 hour before a match or whatever.
Yeah, and I see as well the team organizer. I mean, organizations and team organizers, when they sign this thing that they can store it and they share it, maybe they what should have done is that show it to the team first to like green flag it. Yeah, this is okay to share. This is not okay to share.
Yeah,
one of the things that could as a workaround, right?
Sure, totally. So there's one other question.
Okay.
And that is, we'll get into the more kind of minutiae of the CSPPA. But so here's an issue, right? Because of the relationship that ESL and CSPPA seemingly have, i.e. they pay the CSPPA money. I don't know if that is still the case, but certainly been the case in the past. It looks like there is a bias with the CSPPA on certain decisions. So, for example, Blast and Flashpoint that they've had issues with, people who either didn't pay them money or refused to based on what they saw as a breach of agreements. They've had negative interactions with the CSPPA and sometimes openly hostile allegations. ESL have breached an agreement that they made with the CSPPA in that there would be no games after midnight, which is one of the principles that the CSPPA has put forward for better welfare for players. They breached that multiple times and the CSPPA has remained silent. That leads people to ask, is there an inherent bias in the CSPPA? So as a board member, is there?
As a board member, I can say that we have been silent to ESL about this in public, which shouldn't, which I think should be, as I said, transparent, and we should have been more public about it as we were in the Flashpoint case. But we've been furious with the games going past midnight, multiple times, over and over. There were 2 consecutive days at some event, I think IM Fall, that it went beyond midnight, and we just had call prior to that, like few hours before that, to ensure it's not happening, and it's still happening. And it still always boils down to the conclusion that, well, we had an issue. Yeah, like let's say they had an issue, which it was unpredictable. It never happened before, and it will not happen again. But when these are happening 2 days in a row, it kind of questions the whole, like, why are we even having this in our like contract or whatever. So I definitely agree that it was a little bit blown out of proportion with a Flashpoint thing on scale for public. But to my knowledge, I'm actually not going to go into this deep because I'm not knowledgeable enough and confident enough to talk about this, because I know you were part of the Flashpoint, and it happened.
Oh no, I wasn't actually. I had nothing.
You weren't. Okay. It was the thing that it again happened before I think
I broke the story, but I didn't. I think the extent of my relationship with Flashpoint was, I think they wanted me to maybe do some work there, but that was pre-pandemic. So when the pandemic happened, I said, listen, guys, I'm not coming to LA in the fucking middle of a pandemic. So, enjoy. If you can find something for me to do online, happy to take your money, but, otherwise, no. And I was pretty critical of them and some of the things they did. But, I obviously have a good working relationship with Christopher and a good working relationship with Duncan. But I mean, like, I was never officially
my bad.
Oh no, don't worry about it. I think a lot of people probably do think that. Actually, I've seen other people say that. So just to clarify.
Okay.
But I did run the story about the Flashpoint and CSPPA problems.
Yeah, and I know from my knowledge that and I cannot go too deep into this because there are some legal stuff that I just can't mention. And I know that breach of agreement that you mentioned before is a question whether the agreement was in place and it was valid. I'm gonna leave it there. And I would love to go, but as I said, not knowledgeable enough, not confident enough to speak about this publicly, because it again happened before I joined in, and I don't want to use this as an excuse because I already mentioned it 3 times today in this call. But it really kind of it's impossible for me to keep up with everything here. But I'm trying to shed as much light as possible on anything that you have. So yeah, that's the thing with Flashpoint here. But we are critical. We are critical about ESL as well. It's just I think it should. We are pressuring them in a private matter on a lot of stuff, which it doesn't create this balance because we did it with Flashpoint publicly, you know.
Yeah. So look, I when you said prior to this that you got this new board and they're a lot more active, they're more interested in certain topics, and the meetings are a lot better now. Let's obviously just talk a little bit about the previous board, because it had, and again, this is no disrespect to anyone on the board, it had a lot of bigger names, but obviously there were certain questions. For example, obviously you had Zipnix, Nicola Nyholm sort of implied that Mads Oland had disrupted him, and it led to their contract frictions. Again, I don't trust anything Nicola Nyholm says, but that's a matter of public record. You had Elige, obviously, with Team Liquid. You've had Taco. Obviously, there was a weird situation there where Taco kind of was... he had an ownership stake in a team that was like called out by ESIC and stuff and all of that weirdness. You had Tarek, who was kind of on the outs, Evil Geniuses at the time. And then you had Nothing, who obviously is a retired player. The only 2 holdovers are MBK and Chris J. Do you think this board is a better representation of the current pro player scene and could do a better job of representing them moving forward?
I truly believe so, that we are better in many ways. I think that we're a lot more diversified, if you would say. We have obviously they had before as well some people from NA, some people from Europe, etc. But right now we're also focusing maybe not on those tier 1 only tournaments, and we're having some players that are attending a lot of tier 2 events, which we can try to improve as well in the long run. Because when we create an association like this, you can never start with like tier 2 and tier 3, and why are we not focusing on that? And you have to always start from the highest point and slowly work our way down. So I think previous board they did a good job in making sure that what works in tier 1 stays that way, and it keeps working until this day pretty much. But now we can focus more on tier 2 as well, which are some lesser known tournaments, and obviously it's a little bit easier now because everything's remote and online, so they're not really running those tournaments, right? But definitely we are, I think, more diversified in a way that we are not as tied to our teams, and we don't have any like shady background with like investments in other corporations within esports that might disrupt any, like, I don't know, votes, etc., etc. So we obviously have some tier 1 players in the likes of, let's say, Apeks, which is like the guy who was, I think, on previous board member as well. I'm not 100% sure on that. And then we have obviously Mighty Max, JT from NA, Mighty Max from UK. It's me, Golden, which is he was not a player at a lot of during his stint here with CSPPA, so he was more active, dealing with some calls, etc. Chris J is not on the team. He's very vocal and he invests a lot of time into that as well. So we're primarily pro players, but so you have to bear in mind that we are not as swift as others. We're not full-time CSPPA, but this is, I think we're better in this. Obviously, maybe having more ring the bell names in the board member, it's strong to have. It's good to have, obviously, but I think we're doing just fine with what we have right now, and our value is respected amongst the community, amongst tournament organizers. And again, we just represent those players that you mentioned before. Like Elige is still in CSPPA, and
still a member.
Yeah, they're still members. They're just not board members. And if they have something that they want to bring up, shoot us a message. They shoot us a message, and we proceed to do it. And he doesn't have to like not waste, but invest too much time into that as he used to before, which probably it's not for everyone. And I agree.
One last thing. Obviously, there was the whole issue around ESL, the removal of slots from teams that had owned them in the old iteration of the ESL Pro League. This led to comments from Chris J, which didn't go over particularly well in public, although I will admit there's probably other factors at play as why people took them as badly as they did. He basically said, look, there was nothing we could do about NA. We just sort of had to let it go. We weren't really holding any cards to fight that fight. And of course, that came shortly after they'd done the strike action. So it's like, you're saying you're not holding any cards, you're holding the ultimate card. No play, no fucking, like no league, no ESL, no sponsors. So how did you feel about that? Because people felt that it was like, first of all, it was completely wrong of Chris to sort of just say it publicly, but also as well, it's kind of like tipping the hat to ESL and saying like, we know we don't really have any power. What ESL did, of course, was absolutely wrong. It made Thorin basically say he won't work with ESL ever again until they fire the people that took those slots from those teams. So, what do you think about Chris's comments, and do you think it could have been handled differently?
Definitely. I talked to Chris privately a lot, and he knows that a lot of things he says on social media can be handled differently. And I let him know that this is not only the topic. And I mean, we've been teammates for 2 years, where I consider him a friend. All things considered, we have different opinions on a lot of stuff, but those opinions are invaluable to me, because I know that what we have in common and why we fight for in CSPPA is something that is our common fight, common idea, and that is what I value in him. And I think he was it wasn't well written, I would say, but I can't remember the tweet exactly or the context exactly as well. But what I know is that I'm pretty sure that even with this, he has done more good than harm to how CSPPA is actually run and how it behaves and how it's being represented and in general. I wish I could say more about this, but there's not much. I mean, definitely this was one of the times where I think the boundaries were overstepped. In a way. And I completely acknowledge it. And I think if I would bring it up with Chris J right now, I think he would agree.
Oh, sure. I mean, dude, we roasted him on By the Numbers, and I talked to him privately, obviously. Like a lot of us, I think, the isolation and the sudden reliance on social media for human interaction, it's made a lot of people, tweet crazy shit and tweet too often. You fucking, at the end of the day, much like the player recording thing, if you fucking talk too much, you're going to say some bollocks. Now, I can recognize that, right? I'm a grown man, I've said my fair share of crazy shit down the years. And that just happens. And people, if you get into this social media loop of, I have to give an opinion about everything that's happening, eventually on a lot of timescale, you will give the wrong opinion. And there's no forgiveness for that anymore. You can do all sorts of horrible shit in your private life, express the wrong opinion on social media, and your whole life's ruined. So, you've got to be, it's just best not to tweet. Like my rule is, whenever a topic is happening that everyone's talking about, I wait until people stop talking about it, then give it 5 days, then I talk about it, because by then everyone's on to the next bullshit.
That's an amazing rule. I think I'm going to clip this and send this to Chris J as we speak. Yeah,
dude, I listen, it is the ultimate, because what happens is you can't get sucked into a vortex of shit. It's swirling and swirling, and you go, I'll throw something into that. Just wait. The vortex, it's like a tornado. It will move on. He'll go, and then you can't get caught up in it. And it's like, I've realized that as I've got older. It took me a long time to realize that as well, obviously, you know. And also, I'm, like I say, I kind of feel a little bit uncancelable at this point. I've fucking survived. Yeah,
you made it.
Yeah, multiple assassination attempts. So it does give you this, like,
yeah,
you know.
I'm just gonna say that he has definitely a strong voice, and he always have. When he wasn't tweeting that much, when he was still on team, mouse sports, etc., he was still a strong voice within our team. Like he was IGL at some point, etc., etc. So I'm used to this by him, honestly, and I like that he's tweeting this much and sharing his opinion on everything. It forms him as a public figure, as a person, right? You know a lot of about Christian, just the way he thinks about certain like drama topics or conspiracies, etc., etc. Yes. But I honestly value that in him, and I think CSPPA. I don't want this to word badly, but kind of needs these figures that are transparent, maybe over transparent, right?
Yeah, well, listen, but not just that, right? It's important. And, you know, this is what people never got about me, I would say. You know, I'm not saying controversial shit because I enjoy controversial shit. I'm not an influencer. I'm not a drama YouTuber. I find that world repulsive. You know, I'm not saying the things I'm saying for clicks. I don't care. The easiest way for somebody like me to have had a much better career and made more money would have been to the path of least resistance, never criticize anything, sign all the NDAs with all of the games developers, get all the early access, all the content, run PR for them, interview all the players, never get blacklisted by an organization. I'm a millionaire now if I do that. I'm sat here talking. I'm not even talking to you. I'm probably retired by now with millions in the bank. But the problem is I care about esports. When you care about something, you are occasionally going to, like if you care about your kids and they're lazy, you're going to have to say you're a lazy cunt, sort your life out. You know, clip them around the ear, except you can't do that anymore. But I got my ear clipped enough times, right? And so, you know, it's not because you hate anything. It's not because you want to do it, but it's because when you care about something, you have to be like an iconoclastic voice sometimes. And listen, so yes, sometimes that type of person will say something that is absolutely crazy. It is something only they can conceptualize in their brain at that time based on their personal experiences. And it'll seem crazy to everybody else. And it might very well be crazy. It might be Alex Jones level of crazy. But occasionally, you need to take that risk. You need somebody willing to take that risk if you want to improve something, I think. So that is the value, right?
I mean, it's boring to be friends with everyone.
Yeah, right? Fuck that.
And what Christian is really good at, and this is kind of a behind the scenes story, is that he was supposed to sign with FPX, you know, at the beginning of 2020, and he was really close to signing the deal, but I think the negotiations fell flat on the contract itself. And he looked at the contract and he saw something he didn't like, and he repeatedly got it like wrong by FPX, and they apparently didn't want to come to his terms. And he just looked at it and he probably said, like, screw you guys, like F you, I'm not gonna sign this no matter what. I'm gonna be rather unemployed, because like he is to this day not signed to any team, right? I know he was released Mouseplayers just recently, but he said F this, and he doesn't like to be like bossed around, you know, and he's not going to allow anyone to jump on his neck or whatever. So, and this is exactly the personality that strikes me as a correct one for the role in CSPPA. To be blunt, maybe over blunt, and well, yeah, he has a lot of shit that he said, but when it comes to the stuff that matters to me, and that is how CSPPA is run or supported, this is the guy that like I kind of aspire to. Like I want to not care about public opinion as he is not caring about it, right? In a way, he is like, he's gonna say his opinion no matter what, and I like this. I admire it. I'm trying to learn this. I'm trying to be more like, yeah, I'm gonna just say it.
Well, that leads us nicely into the topic that'll make up the last however long we've got left of the podcast, about 25 minutes. You have done a vague tweet, sir. Which you know, and so I'm gonna actually bring it up. I should have done that earlier. I didn't put it in my document. There it is. So you tweeted 4 days ago at the time of recording this. Competitive integrity above all. That's the tweet that will make more sense in a few weeks. Good night. And is that a salute emoji? It looks like
it's a new one. I saw the new one emoji right at the day of that tweet. They made an update, and I saw like, yeah, this sounds fun. Let's do salute one.
Okay, salute emoji. So obviously, I mean, listen, Reddit is just a fucking cesspit. So you had a front page Reddit thread off the back of that, and basically the general consensus was, vague tweets bad. Fuck Styko, which was nice of everybody to say that. So let's elaborate on the tweet. What the fuck are you talking about, sir?
All right. So first of all, the comments between Twitter and Reddit the difference is enormous. Like on Twitter, I'm having fun. Everyone's like, "Oh, Liquid, what is this? What is this? This might be interesting." And on Reddit is like, "Damn, I hate this guy. This guy just lost a fan." No,
yeah, just for future reference as well, what you'll find is different social media platforms attract different types of people, and Reddit are the average Reddit user believes they're completely morally superior and more intellectual to everyone else, which, by the way, they are pieces of shit and morons by and large, like all humans, but they labor under the delusion they're not. On Twitter, they just fucking love drama. They'll tell you to leak any old shit. Right. They love drama and virtue signaling. That's the currency of Twitter. So when you learn the differences, you can play them off. But yeah, I thought the reaction on Reddit was kind of weird, frankly.
So let's spice it up. So why the tweet was cryptic, and I didn't want to make it more public to not put any bad light on anyone other than me, pretty much, by obviously chasing a cloud or doing these kind of cryptic tweets. So the thing is that really is bothering me lately, and that is that Valence, good band, for the coach bug abuse, multiple coach bug abuses actually, and it was brought up by Dexerto, this writer Luis Mira was the one who broke the story. Yes, exactly. He's a good friend of mine. I would consider him, and we actually had a talk, and I was like asking what the hell happened, how did this break out, and apparently it was anonymous tip that he got, and he looked into it, he found it, and he released it. And it was kind of weird because I approached ESIC multiple times over the story was broken at like beginning of February, so it's been over a month right now that I've been trying to chase ESIC to give a little bit of clarification what the hell is going on, right? I've filled up the form that they have on ESIC website. I have emailed at multiple emails that they have. Ian Smith, obviously, one of them. I've made a public tweet. I didn't want to come to this, but I made public tweet. Hey ESIC, reply to me, please.
Yeah.
And I have just general in the name of CSPPA. I just want clarification. How the hell it is possible that it is just found now? Like the scandal happened 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of coaches, and now Balance used it in the same time frame that all of those other coaches did. Why was either Balance not investigated at all, which is one of the people you should probably investigate because he won the major, he was coaching the best team in the world at some point during the online era, so it was really easy. Not online era, but previously in some online tournaments. So it's like, if we want to catch someone doing bad thing, let's look at the best ones, right?
Yeah.
So apparently Valence went under the radar. And my question is, who else did? Is there someone? Is it a possibility that there has been a few coaches still in the scene that were not punished for whatever reason? And ESIC is radio silent. And it's very concerning for how
they're radio silent on a lot of things, mate. I'm fucking pulling my what's left of my hair out over this fucking match fixing stuff.
Exactly, one of the things as well. I have not put too much effort into that match fixing thing because I'm honestly drained with this coach bug thing.
Yeah,
and it's very frustration. Like it's frustrating for me to play in the world or in an environment where I know that some coaches might be still coaching to this day, tier 1 events, tier 1 teams, getting fat paychecks, maybe even attending major events, right?
Mm.
And if that happened, that creates a little bit of issue with, are they in the position right now? Are they coaching tier 1 team because some other coaches were banned and they took their spots?
Yeah.
It created their value was increased by that they survived the coach ban scandal. Right?
I mean, well, so I can give you a bit of insight into this because so obviously, you know, integrity issues, that's like one of the principal things I do reporting on. Covered match fixing for many years. I covered the coaching bug for many years. I was the guy that publicly published the smoke bug that we still don't even know whether or not that was used in any widespread issue. You know, I try and keep the scene clean, whether it's contractual issues, people not paying money, abuse, bullying of players behind closed doors. You know, it's been a quest of mine. I have failed in that quest because it's just got progressively dirtier and dirtier, not cleaner. We've got widespread, open, public, obvious match fixing, which nobody has stopped. And everyone passes the buck on it. You know, ESL and ESEA say, well, we've got an agreement with ESIC. ESIC say, well, we're fucking understaffed and we are investigating it. We'll get round to it. And in the meantime, players fix matches openly, brazenly. And a lot of them have just gone, well, listen, we won't even wait for the bans. We'll just go play in Valorant. Right. And with the coach bug, I forget what the number was. It was like 36. Well, I was thinking it was like 37 initially, and then like 2 or 3 got unbanned. And there was like, and there was like context around other people. And look, so what I've seen videos, right, which aren't public, of big name coaches clearly using a bug, a coaching bug. I've seen it with my own eyes, as in they're in one of these skybox bugs and they are moving their mouse, or someone is moving their mouse. It would be up to them to explain who it is. And that suggests to me that, yes, there is a significant number of coaches that didn't get caught. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because the bug was different. I don't know if it's because ESIC didn't get round to it. I don't know if it's because there wasn't enough evidence, although I think the videos I've seen are pretty conclusive in a number of cases. And so far, oh God, I shouldn't say this, but I am going to say it. There's a list floating around with 27 names on it.
All right. High profile coaches, I assume.
Some, yeah.
It's crazy because the rumors around the block is that I've heard the same, which you just said. The thing is, obviously, when the investigation was made by Steven Dudenhofer and Michal Slovinsky.
Yeah, Michal, yeah.
I think they said openly in some of their tweets that they're not actually manually checking for every demo in HLTV database, but they created a bot, right? That a script that is doing it for them to make it plausible because possible because it took months for them to come to a conclusion to go overhaul that database. It's thousands of matches, thousands of matches, right? And they did it like full time from the morning till the evening. 8 hours per day, 10 hours per day, and they were just watching demos and writing down the instances. So clearly they had an information, right? Because they went over everything.
Seems that way.
What it seems to me, and that's why I have such big trust issues right now with ESIC, is that they didn't act on some of those reports. And so far, only Valence have been, accused. Outside of that original statement where 37 coaches were banned, only Valence, and only thing that Valence and those that were banned don't have in common is that Valence won a major. He was tier 1 coach, and other tier 1 coaches weren't really banned, honestly. I can think of Ruga as an OG coach, maybe Regine, he was Mousesports coach, but mostly tier 1 coaches weren't really affected, which is kind of weird to me because some coaches, completely unknown teams that played 3 games on HLTV were banned, and they they came up to the point where they appeared in the coach bug by random. They didn't know how to do it. How is it? What are the chances that tier 1 coaches, the best coaches in the world, that are still coaching to this day, didn't encounter it themselves? Like, there's not a single word about it. And Ruga, for example, or current OG coach, he got banned for 1 instance in 1 round.
And also publicly apologized and like totally owned it, even though he was one of the more, in my opinion, minor cases on the list.
But he was listed as a minor case, right? It was the minimum that you can get, 1 round in 1 instance ever, in whole database, and he was still listed. So why aren't others with the same offense listed at all? And maybe that caused, like, Ruga got out of the team, and then some other guy got in his position, and then it creates like this whole domino effect that everything was done originally by ESIC not taking that investigation, I guess, fully serious, because they decided to just punish some of them, or I don't know where I don't want to accuse or anything, but it looks like they didn't want to like break the, how do I say this, like, integrity of tier 1 Counterstrike to not make it look bad, because if all of the coaches were banned, suddenly it looks like terrible for the scene.
Sure. I mean, look, so I don't know if I can agree with that, and I'll explain why. Because, I mean, banning 37 coaches, some of which were tier 1, made the scene look very, very bad. And Valve were very, very angry. And it's changed the role of coaching in CSGO forever. And it would have been better for the scene to have banned everyone all at once and have Valve take that measure than for another however many names it's going to be come out. And now Valve are going to go, fuck it, let's just get rid of coaching altogether. Like, let's just do it. It's just too fraught with peril. You know, now the Valens case, you know, I know him. I think he's a nice guy. And, you know, he said that in one of the instances, you know, he told the tournament organizer and everything else, and, you know, the general reaction in the community was that actually what he'd done wasn't that serious. And it was a clickbait article. I saw a lot of people saying that. And like Lewis Mirror got absolutely wrecked. I mean, his comment where he just pointed out the number of instances Valence used it, got 365 downvotes, net downvotes. Like, people just didn't want to hear it. So I think when we get to these names, we are going to have to be very clear that there needs to be some distinctions made, because this bug was happening accidentally. It was happening accidentally, and some people used it anyway. And some figured out how to recreate these bugs and were recreating them and using them. We need to be very careful about how we proceed, I think, because if we tar everyone with the same brush, you know, well, some innocent people are going to get caught up in that, and some guilty people aren't going to get as severe a penalty as they probably deserve.
Completely agreed. I mean, let's say there's some case where coach bug happens for like 20 seconds and coach immediately panics and disconnects. I think that's like fair. I would come up to this coach and I would say respect.
Yeah. I mean, like, you can't take action against that because it's a bug in the game.
Yeah. But at the same time, if someone has more than 1 instance and it keeps happening and he keeps searching for that information by hovering the mouse around, you know, and being essentially a camera, or the free roam bug.
Yeah.
Where he literally flies around the map and it's obvious to even people who are not playing Counter-Strike that this is wrong. I shouldn't be seeing this. I will disconnect. But let's say this free roam bug happens and he literally follows enemy team for the duration of the whole round. I think that's, you know, it's questionable, but it should have been revealed together with whole the list of the 37 coaches before. Like, I feel like the evidence have been brought up because, and that's I'm assuming it because the bot or script went over the database, and it's highly unlikely that it would be missing something. So yeah, It's really weird. And on top of that, there's one other issue, for example, where, and I've never seen a louver agreement. Actually, I've never been a part of the team that had louver agreement with ESL, but I've heard that in that louver agreement, there's something along the lines where the team that is like person that was ever caught cheating, if he's on that team that the agreement is with, the agreement is like not acceptable, right?
Yeah.
It's invalid. So, and I know for a fact that Balance, I love the guy. He was my coach briefly, and I have utmost respect, or I had before, like the coach back happened. And he is still part of the Evil Geniuses, which is part of the Lure agreement in the first place, right? This is something that could be as well brought up, and integrity issue might be problem here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. I mean, you know, the question becomes, you know, me and Duncan were saying for ages that we wanted to see the CSPPA take more interest in the matters of integrity, because for me, there can be no greater violation to player rights than if other players are betraying the, you know, social pact of fair competition. That to me is a much bigger issue than will this fucking analyst leave and be a coach one day and might know that, you know, we fake B when we throw this molly or something. So are your tweets indicative that the CSPPA is ready as a group to take a more active role in investigating and pushing these integrity issues?
Exactly. We're working as a unit here, but I know that it's really rough, because I find it really hard to believe that out of all those instances that you said, 27 plus 35, whatever, out of all those instances, players didn't knew.
That's another kettle of fish. I mean, we saw it with Heroic, you know, that. And look, so again, we need to sort of have a sliding scale, right? A player knowing and telling the coach, don't do it again after it's happened. What can you realistically do? Like, sure, maybe you can report to somebody. Maybe you should. I don't really know about that. I don't know. You know, I guess the right answer is, yeah, you should tell somebody, tell an admin, tell a TO, tell your management. But what certainly seems to have happened in the Heroic case is that they came to a collective agreement, or at least two members did, to basically say, 100, if you ever do it again, we're never going to fucking play. You know, we'll rat you out. We're never going to play with you. A lot of people focused on the players, including other pro players. But the reality is, so I've talked to many pro players about this topic, and they all say the same thing. If a coach gives us information we know they realistically can't ascertain, then we know they're doing something wrong. They're cheating. Yeah. And, you know, I don't think people realize the high level pro players operate on. I'm more of the opinion, I don't think it's reasonable that a player could. No, but all the pro players I've talked to tell me they absolutely would know. And so, yeah, that opens up this whole kettle of fish, right? What are we gonna do about, you know, like once we investigate the coaches, now we need to investigate the players. It also retroactively looks players being worried about voice recordings. It looks like they're trying to hide something. So yeah, now we've got a real big fucking, you know, like I say, kettle of fish, can of worms, call it what the fuck you want. It's a big fucking mess.
It is a big fucking mess. And from what I understand, to go back to your question, if this is CSPPA behind this investigation, I'm completely okay with putting my name only behind it. Because I'm, as I said, we delegate roles in the CSPPA board, and I took this onto myself because I feel like integrity is really big part for community, and I'm willing to put my name on it, even if I get tremendous hate, just like Luis Mira and Dexerto did. Like, I'm gonna be probably hated by many people, many coaches, many fans, etc. But I value it more, the integrity. I value it more over what people think of me. If the scene is rotten, I'm gonna fucking say something, right?
Do you think this is gonna lead to a lot of friction between you and Styk?
If they would be willing to reply to me, there would be some. There's no friction.
That'd be a start, right?
Yeah. I'm talking to a wall, literal wall. I would love to talk to them about this. And the reason why we're having this call is partly because Easing is ignoring me. I can't get like further because I'm desperate. Okay, I'm not doing this call out of desperation, to be fair, but you know what I mean.
No,
I'm desperate
I
and I'm not moving forward. And I think I could be moving forward if there would be a little bit of collaboration from someone who is believed to be integrity, peace, pillar within the scene that Isak is, right? So yeah, this is my stance on it. I'm really unhappy to bring this up, but I feel like it's necessary because if the rumors are true that you and me mentioned here on the call, it's gonna have tremendous shakedown of the scene. People will get fired. People will get banned for forever. Sometimes it's gonna pull investors out of the scene. Is it like you come to the conclusion? Is it even worth to investigate this because it's gonna create so much drama instead? But for me, 100% worth. Like I don't care if I'm doing this because I've never encountered it. My coach in any team, if it was Devil Walk, if it was Poly, if it was LMBT, Valence at some point, they never said something fishy. I believe I've never participated in a game where coach told me something. So that's why I feel like I'm in the clear here. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe those leagues that will happen at some point will point out like all of my coaches cheated. I don't know. But I'm going to be completely okay with that because if they did, they deserve to be banned. I friendship or not, like I don't care.
So interesting times ahead, I guess, for CSGO. Just as sort of a final question, I mean, do we have I know how detailed these investigations can be. Do you have a sort of rough timescale for when you think something's going to be public?
I really wish to push this before the major happens. I don't want to be those who did something bad. I don't want those to be present at the major, if that makes sense. You know, like
of course, yeah.
It's a huge tournament, and I'm not doing it in spite of me not qualifying. This investigation of mine has been ongoing for months throughout the 2022, basically.
So, look, I know we're sort of ending on a bummer note, but we're at our time, our allotted time. So it was super interesting times ahead. Obviously, I'll help where I can. You know, you can always reach out to me. I'm digging into this myself. You know, we'll just have to wait and see how it pans out. But just finally, where I always end, what are you going to be doing next? When will you next be in competition or doing anything interesting?
Doing anything interesting? I'm really focusing on some content, educational content for pro players or aspiring pro players. So this is something that I've been allocating some of my time amongst other things. But competition wise, I think we're gonna hit a lot of online stuff as usual, as we failed the major, but I'm hoping to get more lines back in the landscape and attend those as much as we can, because I feel like we are capable of doing well at them. And it's just a matter of time. As I said in the beginning of the interview, we're a young team, but full of hunger, as they say, you know. So let's see if we can reach our goals.
Well, look, as always, mate, great to talk to you. Best of luck with those goals. Best of luck with this investigation. And let's see who is the last man standing once it all happens. So there you go. That is, of course, Styko of Apeks. Go show him some love. Follow him on socials. And if you enjoyed this interview, certainly leave a comment. Tell us what you think about it. You know, share it on social media and all that good stuff. And I'll be back again in the future. Don't know when. Don't know who the guest will be. Never do. But it shouldn't be too long. So as always, thanks for watching. And until next time, take care of yourself. Bye.